little was known about Japan's plans and capabilities. In effect, Admiral Phillips was setting Force Z on a course for the unknown. He was accepting a considerable risk, but it could hardly be any different. It was not in the Royal Navy's nature and tradition to hide timidly at port while the other branches were fighting for their lives. The heirs of Trafalgar had to step into the fray. The men of Force Z were in high spirits. The Prince of Wales had arrived in the Far East, basking in the glory of one of the few British successes at this stage of the war. Earlier that year, they had participated in the sinking of the German battleship Bismarck. Having beaten the elite of the Kriegsmarine, many of them believed the Japanese would be no serious match. An American war correspondent who had been allowed to travel with Force Z listened in on the chatter among the officers on board. "Those Japs can't fly," one of them said. "They can't see at night, and they are not well trained," another added. "They have rather good ships, but they can't shoot." They were supported in these views by a consensus in the West about the military capabilities of Hirohito's warriors, or their lack thereof. Fletcher Pratt, an influential writer, had played down the threat posed by Japanese pilots, arguing that their national character condemned them to mediocrity in the air. "The aviator is peculiarly alone," he had written in a widely read text 2 years earlier, "and the Japanese, poor individualists, are thus poor aviators." In fact, the Japanese were ahead in the game of air power. Admiral Phillips was no stranger to the Far East, having served in its waters during the previous World War, but he was also a traditional Navy man who had long expressed doubts about the importance of naval aviation. On the face of it, his confidence was justified, as the close-range anti-aircraft weapons of his flagship included 16 5.25-inch guns, 48 2-pounders, 2 40mm Bofors guns, and a dozen 20mm Oerlikon cannon and Lewis machine guns. Still, his thinking on the subject was formed by the conflicts of the past, not the future. At a meeting of senior British officers a few years earlier, veteran aviator Arthur Harris, later known as Bomber Harris, had told him, in weirdly prophetic fashion, "I had the strangest dream last night, Tom. I saw your future so clearly. War was declared in the East, and the Japanese had taken Siam. You'd been promoted admiral, and you set off in your flagship up the east coast of Malaya to deal with the situation. Suddenly, down comes a rain of bombs and torpedoes. You look down from your bridge and say, 'What a lot of mines we've hit.'" Phillips may not have remembered Harris's prescient words, as he now found himself in the precise situation that he had forecast. But more recently, the admiral had come around to the revolutionary potential of modern aeronautics, and he now understood that aircraft did indeed pose very real dangers to surface vessels. Therefore, he was doubly concerned by messages he received from Singapore during December 9th, his second day at sea. On the one hand, he was informed that he would not be getting the fighter protection he had requested at Singora. On the other, he received a warning that land-based Japanese bomber planes were believed to be deployed in southern Indochina within easy striking range. Late in the day, a Japanese aircraft was sighted over the horizon, making it all but certain that Force Z had been discovered by the enemy. Weighing the odds, Phillips decided to turn around and steer back towards Singapore. It would, the U.S. Navy's official historian later remarked, have been a happy ending had he persisted in this resolve. What made Phillips change his mind was a telegram arriving from Singapore shortly before midnight. Enemy reported landing Kuantan. The city of Kuantan, on the east coast of the Malay Peninsula, was located much further south than any previously reported landings, and if the Japanese succeeded in establishing a foothold there, it would drastically change the strategic situation, putting Singapore within much easier reach of rapidly moving infantry. Kuantan was not too far from the route that Force Z had planned for its return journey anyway, and Phillips decided to make a detour for the reported Japanese landing zone. Given everything that Phillips knew at the time, which was not much, it was not an unsound decision. Less sound was his decision not to call for air support from Singapore. He did not want to break radio silence, and might have believed that aircraft would be sent as a matter of course, due to the obvious urgent need to contain the Japanese landing force.